Salut tout le monde, welcome to our second video of our sacred music Q&As. What is sacred music? This will be the first of several videos on this topic because there's a lot to cover since we are going over the Moto Proprio from this saint, this Pope Pius X. His papacy began in 1903, ended in 1914. And it's important to look at this number because his Motu Proprio, I believe his papacy began in August. His Motu Proprio on sacred music came out in November of that year. Before we get into detail of this document, it's important to see the documents after 1903 concerning sacred music. I will put these links down below. Mediator Dei, 1947, Musicum sacrae, 1955, Sacrosanctum Concilium, 1963, that's Vatican II, Musicam sacram, 1967, and the 100th year anniversary of the document we're discussing today, and of course the Roman Missal details. So let's get into a bit of history as to the times that our saint has been living in, the music that he experienced. That kind of, I imagine, he was probably predicting the future when he was writing the Moto Proprio. So, couple composers we're going to look at. The Italian composer Luigi Cherubini wrote many operas. He also wrote some masses. Beethoven considered him he was highly regarded by Beethoven. Gaetano Donizetti, the big leader of the bel canto movement during the Romantic era, the 1900s. Gabriel Fauré, César Franck, both French composers. I believe Fauré was the head of the Paris Conservatoire and both organists. So these styles of music, the Romantic era, you start hearing Verdi, you start hearing Liszt, Wagner, start delving away from, gradually going away from the classical forms. And then post sort of the modern era of Scriabin, although he was a majority of his works were from the late 19th century, a lot of his stuff started delving into experimenting with different harmonic scales. Schoenberg, 12-tone system, really getting away from the classical traditions. Stravinsky, Rite of Spring, right? And even though Catholic and an organist, very much praised in the Catholic music world, Olivier Messiaen, very, very, I think there's a typo there, very, very modern, definitely experimented with different harmonies and very, very 20th century. So it's kind of amazing that this Pope, in his first one of his first duties as a Pope was to send out this Motu Proprio in 1903, just a few months after he was elected, became the Pope. So I think it's good because I don't like watching videos and not knowing the answer until the very last minute, but in this document, he basically answers the question for us. What is sacred music? It's holy, it's universal, and it's excellent of forms. Holy in that it is intentional with a purpose. Two-part, glory of God and the sanctification of the faithful. And if you see these words, these words happen quite a bit in future documents. I believe Sacrosanctum Concilium in Vatican II says these words specifically. Universal, sacred music is universal, so it is Gregorian chant. It is accessible to all cultures and proper to the sacred liturgy. And it's excellent, it's beautiful, holds truth, beauty, and goodness. So we will be going through just the first part of this document. I'll just highlight a few things from the intro and go through one of the sections of it with a little bit of commentary from a director of music point of view. So, on y va. Let's go. So this is the intro, but let's go through. And like I said, I'll put the link down below if you want to read the whole thing. But I think it's important to read some parts of this intro. Nothing should have place, therefore, in the temple calculated to disturb or even merely to diminish the piety and devotion of the faithful. Nothing that may give reasonable cause for disgust or scandal. Nothing above all which directly offends the decorum and sanctity of the sacred functions and is thus unworthy of the house of prayer and the majesty of God. We do not touch separately on the abuses in this matter which may arise. Today our attention is directed to one of the most common of them, one of the most difficult to eradicate, and the existence of which is sometimes to be deplored in places where everything else is deserving of the highest praise, the beauty and sumptuousness of the temple, the splendor and the accurate performance of the ceremonies, the attendance of the clergy, the gravity and piety of the officiating ministers. Such is the abuse affecting sacred chant and music, and indeed whether it is owing to the very nature of this art, fluctuating and variable as it is in itself, or to the succeeding changes in tastes and habits which the course of time, or to the fatal influence exercises on sacred art by profane and theatrical art, or to the pleasure that music directly produces, and that is not always easily contained within its right limits, or finally to the many prejudices on the matter, so lightly introduced and so tenuously maintained even among responsible and pious persons, the fact remains that there is a general tendency to deviate from the right rule. Such heavy words for an opening document. Let's keep going. We consider it our first duty without further delay to raise our voice at once in reproof and condemnation of all that is seen to be out of harmony with the right rule above indicated, in the functions of public worship and in the performance of the ecclesiastical offices. Filled as we are with a most ardent desire to see the true Christian spirit flourish in every respect and be preserved by all the faithful, we deem it necessary to provide before anything else for the sanctity and dignity of the people, in which the faithful assemble for no other object than that of acquiring this spirit from its foremost and indispensable font, which is the active participation in the most holy mysteries and in the public and solemn prayer of the Church. It's so interesting to see these words right here because it's of ambiguity in the Vatican II documents, Sacrosanctum Concilium, where it's supposedly of ambiguity. Yet this document really details what sacred music, what that actually means. So let's go into the actual general principles. So like I said, this will be the first of several videos. There's quite a bit concerning the instruction of sacred music. And like I said, I'm just going to give some commentary as we go along. So, all right. Instruction on sacred music, general principles. Sacred music being a complementary part of the solemn liturgy, participates in the general scope of the liturgy, which is the glory of God and the sanctification and edification of the faithful. Kind of want to take a moment here to highlight this word, complementary. It's easy as musicians, especially if you work in a secular atmosphere, say, what comes to mind is playing for like a wedding reception. When you play for a wedding reception as a musician, you are generally seen as just an add-on to the to the event. You are just something that provides a background to the event that's taking place. But according to Pope Pius X, sacred music is a complementary part, not supplementary, not just it's part of the liturgy, and obviously it's essential by the nature of saying it's complementary. It contributes to the decorum and the splendor of the ecclesiastical ceremonies, and since its principal office is to clothe with suitable melody the liturgical text proposed for the understanding of the faithful, its proper aim is to add greater efficacy to the text, in order that through it the faithful may be more easily moved to devotion and better disposed for the reception of the fruits of grace belonging to the celebration of the most holy mysteries. It is so interesting that he would say to clothe with suitable melody the liturgical text proposed for the understanding of the faithful, because the text is in Latin, right? And he's basically saying that it should be understood by the listener. Now, whether that means actually hearing the word and understanding it, that could be one way of looking at it, or that melody serves as, in its own nature, in its own development as a melody, that you should be able to understand it through that. It's so interesting. So interesting. Let's keep going. Sacred music should consequently possess in the highest degree the qualities proper to the liturgy, and in particular sanctity and goodness of form, which will spontaneously produce the final quality of universality. It must be holy, and must therefore exclude all profanity not only in itself, but in the manner in which it is presented by those who execute it. When I read that, I immediately think of how humbling it is to actually to sing the text, the chanted text, or to play organ for the Mass. It's such a, I don't know, it's just to be part of the Mass in that respect, to be saying the words of God and singing it in a way that's been handed down for centuries. It's a truly humbling experience. Okay. It must be true art, for otherwise it will be impossible for it to exercise on the minds of those who listen to it that efficacy which the Church aims at obtaining in admitting into her liturgy the art of musical sounds. So, it must be true art. That means that there must be a standard that is set for what is appropriate for the Church. It can't be just anything that we want. It must be true art. But it must at the same time be universal, in the sense that while every nation is permitted to admit into its ecclesiastical compositions those special forms which may be said to constitute its native music, still these forms must be subordinated in such a manner to the general characteristics of sacred music that no body of any nation may receive an impression other than good on hearing them. That definitely brings us today, where we have different cultures being pressed into the liturgy, and it can be difficult kind of discerning what is appropriate and what is not. I think as we start reading more of this document, I believe this is the end. Yeah, this is the end. As we start reading more of this document, hopefully we can I can provide a little bit more insight on that. But again, it does these words definitely say that there is a standard, a general standard of sacred music that we should all be trying to attain when we're executing, and also when we're composing music for that matter. So I will leave it just at that. I think that covers a lot, but we will definitely go over a lot more in the next few videos. The next few videos will detail instruments, will detail singers, and delve a little bit more into what on the specifics of sacred music. So if you like this video, like it, share it, subscribe to our channel so you can see and hear more of these questions. Later this week, I'll do a video on the chant for this coming Sunday for the Latin Mass. So thank you, and a bientôt.